Hai, Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Saya Ashwat Ismail. Agenda Awani khas istimewa World Economic Forum 2022 di Davos, Switzerland. Hari ini istimewa untuk kita membicarakan tentang masa depan Malaysia. Persoalan besar yang sering kita tanya kepada diri kita sendiri. Di mana Malaysia di atas peta dunia? Sama ada peta ekonomi digital, peta sosial maupun peta benda baru seperti blockchain dan juga NFT contohnya. Tetapi kita harus melihat dalam konteks yang lebih mikro untuk kita melangkah jauh ke depan. Bersama dengan Agenda Awani pada malam ini di Davos, Switzerland ini, pengerusi eksekutif kumpulan syarikat QI, Datuk Seri Vijay Eswaran. Terima kasih Datuk Seri, setiap tahun kita jumpa di Davos ini. Kali ini mungkin berbeza. Situasinya berbeza. Ini yang menariknya mengenai suara Malaysia di pentas antarabangsa. Datuk Seri sentiasa melontarkan pandangan. Tetapi kita lihat ke dalam pula. Dari kacamata luar. Where are we, sir? Di mana kita sekarang, Datuk Seri?
So, dunia kita ni sekarang sudah berbeza juga. We are right now at the tail end of the pandemic. Pandemik ialah satu perkara yang akan menjadi sejarah. Tetapi the thing that we have to look forward ialah bahawa the new reset, artinya apa yang akan menjadi normal pada tempoh depan ni akan sangat berbeza daripada yang dulu. So the question is, are we ready? So, masalahnya ialah bahawa pada waktu ini, kita semua ini it's like on the edge of a cliff.
Ya.
So, ada banyak orang yang tanya saya ataupun berhubung dengan saya yang takut tentang masa depan Malaysia. Memang kita tidak mahu menjadi macam Sri Lanka. And harusnya kita mesti elakkan itu. Tapi bolehkah kita ikut jalan itu juga? I feel yes.
We are at risk.
Very much so.
Kita berdepan dengan risiko besar.
So, masalahnya ialah di pendapat semua leader di Sri Lanka itu ialah that there is always going to be something coming out of the basket. So the long-term planning was never there. It was all short-term gains, short-term planning, and this is something that we have to be worried about. Our long-term planning, we used to have 5-year economic plans, and 5-year economic plans were basis for a 25-year plan. Today, we don't even know what we will stand in 5 years.
Right.
And we are a youthful population. Kebanyakan warga negara Malaysia sekarang muda. And their future is right ahead of them. Are we now preparing their future? How did Malaysia become the powerhouse that it was in the 70s, 80s, 90s? It was considered as one of the tigers of Asia, one of the dragons of Asia. And we were among the fastest growing economies. We haven't completely fallen off the bandwagon. Memang sekarang pun kita dalam 40% macam itu. Tetapi we have fallen far more than we should have. Masalahnya ialah bahawa we have forgotten our roots. The roots that made Malaysia so strong, if you look back, it's been our melting pot.
Right.
And if you look at all of the 10 ASEAN countries, for example, I came here to speak on ASEAN.
We are the most diverse then. Yeah.
Exactly. We are technically the most diverse. Yeah. Every other ASEAN country is almost ethnically up to 80-85% belonging to one particular, background, race. We have a very even spread, especially when you take into account East Malaysia as well. Yeah. So, and we are also geographically unique because we are situated on, the Asian continent, all right?
Yeah.
That is landmass-wise, and at the same time we are part of the archipelago of islands. Sama-sama. So in ASEAN there is a divide between North and South.
Yeah.
North is very strategically on the continent. Burma, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Thailand. And that is also they're connected culturally, linguistically, and so on. The South, Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, which is in between, Brunei, and Singapore. Now, these are all connected by the fact that we are belonging to that similar Nusantara group. ASEAN brings these two groups together, and the only country that is the real bridge between the two groups, Malaysia. In fact, to prove the point, our first Prime Minister, Tunku Abdul Rahman, was himself, capable of speaking Thai. And, the first ASEAN movement was brought together by Malaysia and Thailand coming together. ASEAN is our future. If we look at Malaysia as our end destination, we have a very limited future.
Okay.
At 30 million people, we are a drop in the bucket. Tetapi 650 million people in ASEAN, with Indonesia, with the Philippines at 100 million, Vietnam 100 million, we have a massive population, one of the fastest growing GDPs in the world. And, we are fully capable of being a powerhouse in our own right. But we need to recognize that Malaysia needs to open up and be the center of ASEAN. ASEAN has to become a practical reality. Nusantara has to come together with Indochina, and we will have an economic force that will equal the EU, the US, as well as China.
It goes back to the question that you asked just now. Are we ready? Persoalan yang besar, adakah kita bersedia ataupun tidak? Ada satu kebimbangan. Dan pada masa sama ada satu peluang. Dan setiap krisis ada peluang, opportunity. There is some sort of a sign, quite a worrying sign, that we are becoming more transactional. This is according to analyst, in fact. Adakah kita menjadi sangat transactional sehingga tidak dapat melihat aspek the most important, simple yet very strategic in moving forward, sir?
Yes, we have become very transactional. That is fairly evident, not just in the politics but also in the culture.
Okay.
And sadly, this has been an evolution that has somehow come into being over the last 2 decades, particularly, maybe 3. Prior to that, if you take a look at our sports, for example, a classic example, right? Our Malaysian football team of the 80s,
the Mokhtar Hari of the world, Santot Singh,
James Wong,
James Wong,
Song Chin An, Syukur Saleh, they were magic. Tetapi, they came from the kampung, they brought the kampung with them, it never left. And on the field, they were actually, jago kampung, they were fighting for the motherland. And you can see that. I was fortunate because I was there on the field watching them as a young boy. And till today, that's the passion with which I have brought to PJ City, which is my team in Malaysia.
Okay.
So I feel as Malaysians, we have an edge. Kita boleh, in the words of our former PM, kita memang boleh, and we need to prove it to the world that we can. If you look at Malaysians throughout the world, di mana-mana mereka pergi, we have survived. And one of the reasons I, as a Malaysian, when I left home, and I was able to adapt and adjust and accommodate easily with all the races that I met, whether I was in England or whether I was in the US, it doesn't matter. I adapted because I'm Malaysian. By the time I'm 12 years old, I'm speaking 3 languages. And eating all kinds of different food from different ethnicities.
Okay.
And it was not strange to me. Whereas if I meet, people from Thailand, for example, or Indonesia abroad, they are constricted. They don't have that freedom of mind, that perspective that we have as Malaysians. So Malaysia is a melting pot, and we should be proud of it. We should be proud of the fact that we have brought all of these various cultures to our shores, making us into a hub. And that has always been the edge that we have, that our true edge over all of the other, ASEAN nations. And if you look at hubs across the world, Dubai, ataupun Hong Kong, ataupun London, New York, they are all melting pots.
Yeah.
So this is something that we, on the other hand, have lost, our understanding of. Macam kacang lupakan kulit. We've forgotten where we started.
Yeah.
I go back to the classic P. Ramlee films whenever I want to get motivated, because that is where Malaysia really comes together. And I love it. Even today, when I talk about P. Ramlee, there's so much warmth and understanding, which we as Malaysians now have become more secular and more polarized.
Right.
So it's not a magic answer,
Right.
Tapi
Understood.
in it lies a lot of solutions.
Saya baru balik dari Washington DC.
Yeah.
And yalah, macam-macam orang kita jumpa strategically. And this is the best part, Datuk Seri. I think to connect with your mantra, first, yakini local.
Yeah.
Second, be open. Third, be inclusive. And now, even here in Davos, Switzerland, the appetite towards Malaysia is still high.
Yeah.
Maksudnya orang masyarakat antarabangsa ni suka dekat Malaysia ni.
Ya, memang.
But we have to be more strategic in that sense. So to combine with that mantra, Datuk Seri, I really hope that we can fasten the process of get things done better. Macam mana, Datuk Seri?
Flexibility is key. We have to go in a global mindset. All right, we have to take our children on to the next level, which is to prepare them for a global future. Not a future that is divided by boundaries, geographical or political, but a future that is. I just finished an experience on the metaverse.
Wow.
And it is amazing how the metaverse is essentially, with one sweep, has removed all these boundaries. You can sit there having a boardroom with people from 12 different countries, move from region to region, and in essence, you are in transforming the virtual reality into practical reality.
That's the new globalization.
Yes.
Okay.
So, our children understand this better. If you look at the millennials, centennials, the fact is that despite all of the challenges of them growing up in this era, where in our era we were a lot more open, despite that, they have a lot of advantages in their favor, because mentally they are a lot more switched on to a global world. They don't see the differences, they see the similarities. So I strongly believe that Malaysia, the future of Malaysia lies in the young minds that we are developing.
In creating that, so to say, a good ecosystem, it goes back to education.
Yes.
Now, dalam sistem education kita, dalam sistem pendidikan sekarang, penambahbaikan, Datuk Seri, kita nak cakap apa yang perlu ditambah baik untuk mencapai matlamat tersebut. Global mindset. And Datuk Seri dulu, kini dan selamanya apabila berbicara dengan Datuk Seri sering bercakap mengenai value system.
Betul.
Apa nama dipanggil? Sistem nilai yang kuat dalam kehidupan manusia.
Sistem nilai ini sangat-sangat penting. Dan itu ialah satu daripada khazanah kita yang kita perlu bagi kepada anak-anak kita semua ni. So we are not recognizing, we want to give them material wealth, give them physical comforts and give them the best of everything that we never had. But we are forgetting a very important thing. This coming generation, what they are lacking is not the physical. What they are lacking is the value systems, the ones that we got from our parents. We are not passing that down effectively. The value systems, the cultural strength that we got from our value systems, our ethics, our morality, our way of thinking, these are pillars. You see, that has helped me. I travel across the world. I worked in various countries all across the planet, and among the things that made me survive was my background.
Right.
And being Malaysian, you know the concept of open house. This is amazing because we don't have that in Europe or the US or anywhere else. Open house in Malaysia is a brilliant thing. Instead of building more fences and closing our doors, we should be opening our doors and building more bridges. Bringing the world to Malaysia is the answer. That way, our children have a future. They have an advantage. The world is already at their fingertips. iPad lah, tablet lah, smartphones lah, they are already in touch with the world far more than you and I.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Small kids are moving faster on the tablet than.
That's right.
So, and the fact of the matter is, it's actually great because the world is at their doorstep. They are immediately exposed to the world at large. But it's the value system that will guide them. The value system that will basically, correct them if there are fringes out there that tends to affect them negatively, for example. We cannot protect them from the world, but we can strengthen them so that they know how to protect themselves. This is very important.
How to apply that, Datuk Seri? The concept, the philosophy and the soul of open house dalam sistem pendidikan negara ketika ini.
See, unfortunately, we are trying to reinvent education as opposed to us, allowing education to flow through our borders. Now, what's happening in reality is that the universities today have education programs that are essentially without boundaries. It's all virtual, and they can tap into all of this, and they're actually doing it, and they are bringing that back home. See, for example, to give you a good example, is India. India sent out its best minds, its cream de la cream, to the US. Silicon Valley, the top IT companies all across the US. Of course, it was a brain drain. Essentially, at the beginning, it was a loss to India. Yeah. But eventually, what has resulted is that these guys have come home. All right, whatever said and done, they wanted to come home. Mestilah pergi balik kampung halaman. Yeah. So even Malaysians have that urge. If we open our doors, the Malaysian diaspora out there is our most valuable resource. Because all of them connect to Malaysia, you see, and there is an intrinsic feeling, for Malaysia per se, and they will come back. Investments will come back, skills will come back, and education. So we cannot try to reinvent education, thinking that it must be a proper so-called Malaysian education, because there's no such thing.
Yeah,
you see, it is a global education. We are not preparing Malaysians to live and work in Malaysia. We are preparing Malaysians to live and work in the world. And if that comes true, then work from home becomes a reality, because it doesn't matter where you work from.
That's right.
You see? So, and this is something I think is very critical, that we stop trying to protect. We have gone into this protection mode, whether it is a family, where we are trying to protect and mollycoddle our children, or whether it's the whole country. We're trying to put up borders and say, okay, Malaysians must think in this fashion. You can't do that. And you can see classically how countries have failed in that regard. There's so many countries that have tried to do that. Open the doors to the world. Let the wind flow in from every corner of the planet. But keep our feet strongly in tanah air. That is our answer.
Speaking of that, as we speak, Datuk Seri, I received a WhatsApp message from one of our local economists with local universities from University Putra Malaysia. He has gotten a job. I think he'll be the first Malaysian akan berkhidmat untuk kerajaan UAE dan berpangkalan di Dubai. In September akan memulakan tugasnya. He used to advise even government. I cannot say his name, but I think this is one of the best things that happened to Malaysia.
Absolutely.
Persoalannya, adakah ekosistem kita cukup kuat ataupun cukup baik untuk memanfaatkan talent-talent yang ada ni?
We cannot go back to reinvent the wheel.
Okay, so we have to create new ecosystem. That's what I'm trying to say.
Exactly. So, but I'll tell you, we had the basis of a great system. You and I grew up in that system.
Yeah.
And that system, perhaps we should go back to evaluate what is it that we have lost,
Okay.
and bring that back. Because there's a lot of strength in the way we were brought up. And I think a lot of strength that could be passed on to our children.
No, it goes back to leadership.
Yes.
Cakap tentang leadership, saya tidak boleh lari daripada menyentuh sedikit perkembangan dalam negara.
Yes.
Sebab dia juga berlaku di peringkat global, iaitu the distrust, krisis keyakinan, terutamanya anak-anak muda, masyarakat secara keseluruhannya, and the least trusted jobs in Malaysia, in the world, is politicians.
Yes.
Dalam arti kata lain, dari perspektif seorang tokoh perniagaan yang wave Malaysian flag, yang mengibarkan jalur gemilang di pentas antarabangsa, what is your advice to them? To all politicians across all? I mean, yeah, silakan.
Well, the simplest way to put this is to say to them that it is, I think the best politicians are the simplest. You know, they were the people, if you take a look at our politicians who brought this, who made Malaysia possible, who basically came, they had very simple backgrounds. And today, our politicians have evolved to very sophisticated levels, complicated levels. Politics today has become very complicated. So I have always believed that, you know, honesty.
1 + 1 is 4.
Exactly. Honesty works, in my opinion. Honesty works very well. And sometimes it's very important to be vulnerable as a politician and say, you know, I'm just orang kampung. Let's work together, you know, to get things done. Because I don't have all the answers. And that's a great way to start, you see. Our politicians tend to follow a different philosophy. They know what is right. Yeah. But, you know, what is right and being righteous are two different things. You see, so actually we all go through life making decisions that are wrong, essentially, and then improving it, and eventually making your decisions right. It's a process. And that's what Malaysia needs. Malaysia must be not afraid of making mistakes and moving forward, but making sure that a Malaysia survives. Because that's our future, coming together.
Terima kasih Datuk Seri di atas wisdom, kebijaksanaan dan juga nasihat kepada, saya rasa, merentas semua bidang, semua sektor, anak-anak muda dan masyarakat secara keseluruhannya. How I wish I have more time with you, sir. Tetapi itulah masa yang kita ada. Pendek dan amat bermakna. Kita carry Malaysia, kita wave Malaysian flag, kita kibarkan jalur gemilang untuk kita memastikan Malaysia diletakkan di atas peta dunia dengan lebih jelas dan nyata. Dia tidaklah antara nampak tak nampak, tapi kita bagi nampak terang di atas peta tersebut. Terima kasih Datuk Seri, thank you very much for your time, and we wish you all the best. Dan terima kasih kepada anda sentiasa menonton dan mengikuti perkembangan kami dari Davos, Switzerland ini, World Economic Forum 2022. Saya Ashwat Ismail. Kita jumpa lagi. Assalamualaikum dan